feel it, but I feel half the congregation just went that. That is a blessing, yeah. It is a blessing, not only to have so many children, but to have programming and volunteers and helpers as well. But today, last week, we kicked off the sermon series, Be Still. And we kind of acknowledged, if you will, that we live in a fast-paced world. If you look around, it seems like we are always in a hurry. And this week has been a shocking week for most of us. But on Wednesday, I had actually made not one, not two, not three, but I had made 4 commitments that were all at the same time. And now it's normal, and it's not unusual for me to double book myself and try to be 2 places at one, but committing to 2 things at the same time. But I think even 4 is a record even for me. And then in the midst of this chaos that I created for myself, and apologizing to people and things I missed, I was called, like some of you, and then on Wednesday evening and Wednesday night, my world kind of just got turned upside down. And it's okay. It's okay to be in a hurry. But if we are in a hurry all the time, we either miss something or we begin to neglect something. And when you're always on the run, we oftentimes begin to lose our sense of purpose in this life that we have. And if we don't have purpose, if we don't have a goal or a reason to live, it can have devastating effects and consequences. I mean, even in the hectic, fast-paced life, we need to find ways to just kind of stop, kind of take a step back. Maybe make a break and just kind of be still. And it is when we are still that we are reminded that God is God. So how do we do this? I think it's important that we learn and mentor ourselves from the best. So today, as I shared with the children, today we're going to look at Jesus. Because if you look at all of the 4 Gospels of Jesus' life, if you read every story about Jesus in the Bible, and if you read every story about Jesus that's not in the Bible, yes, there are writings about our Savior Jesus Christ that are not included in the canon of the Bible. If you read all of that, you will find consistently through all of those readings and recordings of Jesus' life that Jesus was a busy man. No one has accomplished more in ministry in a short time than Jesus of Nazareth. And he was constantly on the move. He was traveling, he was teaching, he was preaching, he was healing, and he was even performing miracles to the crowd. And we're told again and again consistently that as Jesus traveled, the crowds began to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The demands for his time and his energy and his resources grew as well. And can you imagine the stress? I mean, doing all the things Jesus did and knowing that these religious leaders were watching you and criticizing your every move. And Jesus was aware and knew that in every crowd, no matter how big or how small, he knew that there was a spy out there that would report back to those people that were out to get him every single time. So our story today comes from the Gospel of Mark. And just as is important the details of the story are, we need to understand its location, where it is located in the Gospel of Mark. Our story comes in the very first chapter. It's the beginning of Jesus' story as according to the Gospel of Mark. And it's also important to note that this is Jesus' first healing story ever recorded. And already Jesus has been baptized, already he's been tempted, already he's called his first disciple, already has he cast out a demon in a woman. So you can see right there in the first 29 verses of the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark, Jesus has been busy. And as we journey through this story, we are aware that whenever we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else. Whenever we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else. When I say yes to working out in the yard and cleaning up the yard, I'm saying no to football and nap time in my big chair. Guess who worked in the yard yesterday? I mean, as we journey through this story, we're aware that we have to have balance. We have to have balance, and we need to know when to say no and what to say no to. So if you return to me to the 29th verse, the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark, it's where we pick up Jesus' story. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, helped her up, and the fever left her as she began to wait on them. The first physical healing of Jesus in his ministry was a family member of one of his disciples. And I mean, I'm sure Simon said, look, Jesus, I'd love to go with you to the next town. I'd love to be one of your disciples. I would love to help you with your ministry. But do you think my wife is going to let me leave with her mother sick? And Jesus' healing Simon's mother-in-law reminds us that healing has to begin at home. We begin by serving those who are closest to us. And I've said this to many people, and it still stands true, that Jesus would not want you to serve Him and neglect your family. God would not ask you to sacrifice your family responsibility to serve Him. I mean, this is an easy slope, especially for ministers to slide down if we're not careful. But it should be for all of us as well. I mean, our purpose, our service, our compassion, our understanding has to begin at home. It's where it starts. So saying yes to our family means saying no to maybe some other things. Verse 32. And that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, and He would not let the demons speak because they knew who He was. Jesus says, you begin at home. And then you can branch out and attend to others' needs. I mean, it says the whole town gathered at His door. But just like Jesus, I mean, we need to understand that once we begin to help others, the need will continue to grow. Jesus healed one lady and then had a large crowd of people that needed healing also. I mean, there is enough need in this world to keep everyone busy for a lifetime. You too can have a whole town show up at your door. As long as there's an earth, there will be a need. Someone will be in need. And we realize the need is tremendous. So we must discern and know who we can help and who we cannot help. Begins at home. Then it branches out. Saying yes to some that we can help means saying no to others we can help also. It's tough. We can't help them all. Jesus continues. Verse 35. But very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, then left the house and went off to a solitary place where He prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for Him. And when they found Him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Everyone is looking for you. Have you ever had that said to you? I I mean, have you ever found a little peace, a little quiet time, and someone comes and says to you, "Hey, where were you? We've been looking everywhere for you. I mean, why did you lock yourself in the bathroom? What are you doing in that closet?" You just need time alone. But it reminds us that people will always demand our time. People will always demand our energy. People will always demand a request for our money. People will always demand a request for our attention. And when that happens to Jesus, listen to His response. Jesus replied, "Let's go. Let's go somewhere else, to a nearby village, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So we traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. Jesus said, "Let's go." He didn't say, "Get out of here, I'm praying." He didn't say, "Why are you interrupting me?" He didn't ignore them and hide behind a tree or a bush. Maybe they would keep looking for him. He simply said, "Let's keep going." So let's keep going. There are other people who need ministering to also. Jesus surrendered to His calling or his purpose, if you will. Jesus knew that He wasn't called or sent to just heal and to preach to one town or one family. He knew the greater totality of His ministry. And I'm sure people in that town wanted Jesus to stay, and it would have been tempting for Him to just say no. But Jesus knew that His message, He knew that His ministry, and He knew that His purpose was so much bigger. There was a bigger picture. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day demands that we lose sight of the bigger picture. I mean, we can move from event to event, from season to season, from day to day, from week to week, to month, year to year, and lose sight of our greater purpose. I mean, we must realize that no matter how hard it may be, there are things we need to say no to and things that we need to continue to our ultimate goal. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard as a parent. Sometimes it's hard as a pastor, because we go from day to day and we forget the overall larger goal. That the goal is not to get my son to school on time, although that is a goal each and every day. But it's to raise him to be a healthy, courageous Christian young man that can stand on his own 2 feet long after I'm gone. Sometimes we forget that in the day-to-day busyness of our life. And then sometimes in that still moment when we invite God into our life, we need to step back and we need to ask ourselves, how do we want to be remembered? How do we want to be remembered? Do you go day to day without any recognition of the greater goal? I mean, it's easy to have a busy life. It's easy to have a busy life. But a meaningful life can be more challenging. We live in a crazy, hurried up, go get 'em, gotta move now, fast-paced world. But we must learn from our Savior to know when to say no and when to say, "Come on, let's go." Will you pray with me? Gracious and wonderful God,